We're going to take a closer look at some of the common species in each of the different oak groups. So we'll start with semi-evergreen oaks. With the water oak, the leaf shape is really distinctive. If you hold it upside down, it looks like a drop of water. So that's really helpful to remember how to identify that one. Now with laurel oak and live oak, their leaves are really very similarly shaped, but the laurel oak leaf tends to be more flat, while the live oak leaf will look a little bit curled under on the edge. So this one is more leathery, often more shiny, and this one is more flat, even though they're relatively the same shape. The laurel oak and live oak are actually easier to distinguish if you look at the growth habit of the tree itself. So a laurel oak tree will look like it has a single trunk, and a live oak will branch very low to the ground. It has a very spreading growth habit. If you look at the range of a live oak tree, it's actually associated with areas that are hurricane prone, because live oak trees, unlike the laurel oak and the water oak, have to germinate in open sunny areas. So natural conditions for that to happen would be after a major hurricane or after a catastrophic wildfire. Now, laurel oaks and water oaks tend to be much shorter lived than live oaks. They might make it 70, 80 years before they start to rot and become hollow, while a live oak often has a lifespan of like 300 to 400 years. Sometimes we say they take 100 years to grow, 100 years to live, and 100 years to die. But some of the huge old live oak trees may be over 1,000 years old. Okay, so the two most common white oak species are post oak in the uplands and swamp chestnut oak in the lowlands. Swamp chestnut oak would typically be found in a hardwood bottomland forest. You can see with this tree that the leaves are lobed like white oak leaves, but they're very, very shallow lobes. That tree also has just huge acorns. They're probably the biggest of any of our native oak species. Now, post oaks, I don't have a post oak leaf. What I have is a bluff oak leaf. They're very, very similar in shape, but you notice that the bluff oak leaf, the two lobes are not even, whereas with a post oak, it looks more like a cross shape where they're exactly across from each other. So post oak is common, whereas bluff oak is relatively rare, one of our white oak species. So for our red oak species, the common upland oak is the southern red oak, and the common lowland oak is the cherry bark oak. So the cherry bark oak has the scientific name Quercus pagoda, and that's because if you hold the leaf upside down, it looks a little bit like a pagoda shape. Now the bark of that tree is also distinctive. It gets that name cherry bark oak because it's very dark in color like a black cherry tree. For the southern red oak, you can see that this one looks like a bell shape. And if you compare the shape of the southern red oak and the cherry bark oak, you see they're relatively similar, but the cherry bark oak has a V-shape base and the southern red oak has a U-shape base. So these are the 7 common oak species of the Sea Islands, and if you know those 7, you'll be able to recognize most of the oaks that you find in natural habitats.